The phone was vibrating against my palm like a live wire, and I already knew who it was before I even looked at the screen. It was that specific, heavy vibration, the one that usually meant I was about to spend the next 3 hours acting as an unpaid therapist for a 33-year-old man who refused to save himself. Have you ever reached a point where you realized your empathy was actually just a slow-acting poison? That's where I was. My brother was calling, and I knew with a sickening certainty that he had crawled back into the furnace again. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from watching someone you love commit emotional suicide on a loop. My brother is 33. I am 25. By all accounts, he should be the one guiding me through the complexities of adult life. But instead, the roles have been inverted for years. I've spent countless nights staring at my ceiling, listening to him sob through the speaker about the latest vile thing his ex had done. It's a cycle that feels like a heavy, rusted gear, grinding down my own mental health until there's nothing left but dust. His ex, let's call him the ghost because he's haunted my brother's life for nearly a decade, is a master of the double standard. He treats loyalty like a suggestion and control like a religion. He goes out whenever he wants, disappearing into the night without a word, leaving my brother to pace the floor and check the clock. But the second my brother even mentions a friend or a coworker, the ghost demands a full interrogation. He wants to know names, locations, and intentions. He demands the finest dinners, the most expensive tech, and elaborate birthday surprises that take months of planning. And what does my brother get in return? The ghost forgot his birthday last year. Not a card, not a text, nothing. How do you look at someone who supposedly loves you and realize you're just a line item in their budget? When my brother complains, he always uses the same phrase. When you love someone, you work through the hardships. It makes me want to scream. Since when is being cheated on and financially drained a hardship? That's not a rough patch. That's a crime scene. But I kept my mouth shut for the longest time because he's my brother. I've loaned him money when his paychecks were swallowed by the ghost's demands. I've driven to his apartment to cook for him because he was too depressed to eat. I've watched him re-gift things I bought for him, thoughtful gifts meant to cheer him up, directly to the man who was breaking his heart. The breaking point didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened on Valentine's Day. For a few months, things actually looked hopeful. They had been broken up since the fall, and after the initial period of mourning where I practically had to keep him on suicide watch, my brother started to change. By December, there was a light in his eyes again. He was talking about a new guy. He was excited. He was planning a big date for the 14th. He texted me that evening saying he'd be busy all night and we'd catch up in the morning. I felt a genuine sense of relief. I thought, finally, he's free. The next morning, the text came. Call me when you get a chance. I called him, my voice bright and full of genuine curiosity. How did the date go? I asked. There was a pause, a long, heavy silence that made the hair on my arms stand up. It wasn't great, he mumbled, but he and X's name are going to have a redo another time. The world stopped for a second. The name slipped out like a secret he hadn't meant to tell. He tried to backtrack instantly, stammering that he'd misspoke, that he meant the new guy, but the damage was done. The new guy was a ghost story. He had gone back. Again. After everything I had done to pull him out of that hole, he had jumped right back in and pulled the dirt over his head. I didn't just get angry, I snapped. It was like a dam breaking inside my chest. We got into a screaming match that felt like years of repressed frustration finally catching fire. I told him he was signing himself up for a lifetime of misery. I told him he was choosing to be a victim of a man who didn't even have the decency to feel remorse for stomping on his boundaries. And then he said the words that killed our relationship. You're just jealous, he spat into the phone. You're single, and you've never been in love, so you're hating on me because I have something you don't. I felt the blood drain from my face. Imagine being told that you're jealous of a toxic, cheating, one-sided disaster. I told him right then and there, I don't want what he has. I want someone who cares about me, not someone who uses me like a human ATM. I told him if he was so blind that he couldn't see the difference, he could lose my number. I told him to stop calling me to vent because I was no longer interested in being the audience for his tragedy. I'm done. He's going to get hurt again. I know it, he knows it, the whole world knows it, and this time I'm going to let him. I'm going to sit in the silence and let him feel the weight of his own choices. Does that make me a bad sister? Maybe. But you can't set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm when they keep jumping back into the ice. Some people don't want a ladder, they just want an audience for their fall. But here's the thing about cycles, they don't stop just because you step out of the room. A year passed. We went low contact, which was the only way I could breathe. For a while, the silence was beautiful. I felt lighter. I wasn't waking up to emergency texts or spending my weekends listening to the same 3 stories of betrayal. But slowly, the ghost started creeping back into our conversations. I held my ground. Every time he brought his partner up, I shut it down. I don't want to hear it, became my mantra. It got so strained that I eventually told him I needed real space. He was shocked. He couldn't understand why I would stop speaking to him over someone else. He didn't realize that it wasn't about the partner anymore. It was about the fact that my brother had become a stranger to me, a shell of a person who only existed to serve someone else's ego. Then came the apology. He told me he'd finally seen the light. He told me the ghost had made him travel 2 hours for a date, only to cancel the second he arrived. He said he finally realized he would never be a priority. He showed me that he had blocked him. He deleted the number. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But he lied, again. They were broken up for exactly 3 weeks before they decided to be friends with benefits. Then, the chemistry was too strong to ignore. They got back together, and this time, they decided to keep it a secret from me. My brother was playing a dangerous game, trying to keep his toxic partner and his supportive sister in 2 separate boxes that never touched. The irony? The ghost insisted on an open phone policy to build trust. He saw our old texts, the ones where I called him exactly what he is, and he told my brother that if they were going to be together, he had to come clean because he wanted to meet the family. When my brother finally confessed, waiting for me to explode, I just looked at him and said, "Okay." That was it. No screaming, no lectures, no tears. He wants to bring him to family dinner? Okay. He wants to talk about how they're in therapy? Okay. I've emotionally checked out of his life. I've realized that my brother might actually like the drama. Maybe the chaos makes him feel alive. But I'm not a character in that script anymore. I'm just a spectator, watching a train wreck from a safe distance. It's funny how control works. It's not always a scream or a demand. Sometimes it's a generous gift. It's a dinner you didn't ask for, or a piece of furniture that comes with 1,000 invisible strings attached. If you're finding this story relatable so far, or if you've ever had to set a boundary that felt like a war, take a second to hit that like button. It helps me know I'm not alone in these situations. My boyfriend's grandmother is the kind of woman who thinks no is just a suggestion from someone who hasn't listened to her long enough. I'm currently navigating a high-risk pregnancy, which means my stress levels are supposed to be kept at a minimum. My mom, my grandma, and my aunts are planning my baby shower. It was supposed to be intimate, small, a few close friends, some good food, and a chance for me to feel celebrated without being the center of a circus. Then, she called. She wanted to help. My boyfriend and I agreed that since she's an incredible cook, she could handle some of the food. That was the compromise. Give her a task so she feels included, but keep the reins tight. We should have known better. Within a week, she was calling with a list of mandatory guests. People I've never met. People my boyfriend hasn't spoken to in a decade. People who have no business being at a private family event. When we told her no, she didn't just get upset. She went into project manager mode. I went to her house to discuss the menu, and the second my boyfriend left the room, she pulled out a list. She had written down everything. Napkins, plates, cups, decor, prizes. She started trashing my theme, calling theme plates trash, and insisting she could find cheaper ones. I kept my voice level. My mom has it covered, Grandma. She didn't hear me. She started listing the 5 friends of hers that had to be there. I felt the familiar heat of a panic attack rising in my chest. With a high-risk pregnancy, every spike in blood pressure feels like a threat to the baby. I told her she could call me about the food, and we left. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. "I forgot 3 more people you have to invite." My boyfriend saw the look on my face and snatched the phone. He didn't hold back. He told her clearly, "This is her baby shower. You are a guest. You cannot invite 10 people to an event you aren't hosting." Her response? She flipped the script. She started screaming about how she was paying for all this crap, referring to the food she begged to provide, and that if she couldn't have her way, she would just throw her own baby shower. She even threatened to skip ours entirely. Fine, don't come. But then came the Trojan horse. A few days later, a massive baby wagon arrived at our house. It's expensive, it's high-end, and it wasn't on our registry. I looked at it and felt a chill. I knew exactly what it was. It wasn't a gift for the baby, it was leverage. It was a physical object she could point to later when she wanted to overstep again. After everything I've done for you, after the wagon I bought, it's a bribe for future compliance. My boyfriend talked to his sister, who confirmed that Grandma had called her crying, saying she'd never been so disrespected in her life. She truly believes that buying food entitles her to ownership of our lives. She even told us once that if we didn't baptize our daughter, she would just take the baby and do it herself. She wasn't joking. When does a gift stop being a kindness and start being a cage? We aren't budging. The wagon is sitting in the hallway, and honestly, I'm tempted to ship it back. I don't want anything from this woman. Not a meal, not a toy, and certainly not a favor. My health and my peace of mind aren't for sale. We are sticking to our boundaries, even if it means her seat at the shower stays empty. Because at the end of the day, if you don't stand your ground now, they'll be the ones holding the map for the rest of your life. Control often wears the mask of a generous gift. There's a specific kind of satisfaction that comes from dealing with someone who thinks the world revolves around their 5-minute window of convenience. I live about 100 meters from a local school. For the most part, it's fine. I like the neighborhood, but every afternoon, the grandparent brigade arrives to pick up their grandkids, and they seem to think my driveway is a public parking spot. I came home from work the other day, tired, hungry, and generally done with the human race. There was a car idling right in front of my driveway. The driver, an older man, was just sitting there, scrolling on his phone. I pulled up and signaled for him to move. He looked at me, gave a dismissive wave, and mouthed the words, "It's just 5 minutes." That was the wrong thing to say to me. I didn't honk. I didn't scream. I just turned off my engine. I left my car exactly where it was, completely blocking the entire street. Within seconds, a line of cars started forming behind me. The honking started, a symphony of frustrated parents and grandparents who just wanted to get home. The noise was glorious. Finally, the traffic cop who works the school zone walked over to see what the holdup was. "Why are we stopped?" he asked, leaning down to my window. I gave him my best innocent neighbor smile. "Oh, it's no big deal," I said loudly enough for the guy in the driveway to hear. "This gentleman is just parked in front of my driveway for 5 minutes to pick up his kids, so I'm just waiting for him to finish so I can go home." The cop's eyes shifted to the car in the driveway. His expression went from confused to annoyed in a heartbeat. He didn't just tell the guy to move. He pulled out his ticket book. I sat there in the air-conditioned silence of my car and watched as the 5 minutes turned into a very expensive afternoon for him. I would have been perfectly happy with him just moving, but watching him sign that ticket? That was the best end to a bad day I could have asked for. Setting boundaries isn't always about a grand gesture or a screaming match. Sometimes it's just about turning off the engine and letting the consequences catch up to the people who think they're exempt from the rules. Whether it's a toxic ex, a controlling relative, or a guy in your driveway, the moment you stop playing their game is the moment you win. If you enjoyed these stories and want to hear more about how people finally took their power back, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. I'd love to hear in the comments, what's the one boundary you've set that changed your life? I'll be reading through and replying to as many as I can. Until next time, take care of yourselves, and don't let anyone turn your life into their drama.